I'm here to talk about identifying opportunity. The title of my talk is sort of Sparking Innovation in Education by Identifying Opportunity. And when I think about opportunity in education, the field of education is, there is no other field of study, academic discipline, profession, artistic endeavor that feeds more on innovation than education. At the same time, there is no field of study, academic discipline, craft, career that is so closely attuned to established tradition and established norms than education. So the oxymoronic nature of this thing, this beast that needs to always be reinventing itself, but at the same time is so closely married to how things go, it kind of clouds the vision of educators. The image that you saw flying across the screen were different classrooms over the course of the last 100 years, some in black and white and some in photo. And what you'd notice in all those images is that the structure of the classroom actually remains the exact same. Sure, in some of them we have, fancy screens. Sure, in some we may have some laptops on desks. Sure, in some we may have seats grouped in four, but still all facing towards the front of the classroom. Despite the fact that we have new technologies, the nature of teaching and learning, the nature of education, despite the fact that it's feeding on innovation, is still focused on the exact same thing. And so when I think of education and I think of innovation, my chief requirement is, and things that I want to share with you, is that the best way to welcome innovation in education is to become a person who Maxine Greene calls wide awake, to be mindful. And essentially, my work, and it's been described as innovative, is really birthed out of my making sure that whenever I go into any space, I'm always looking at every phenomena, every person, everything that walks by, drives by, as an opportunity to give me something to spark the way I think about my life's work. I walk through life with a lens of urban education as a filter. And that is what being wide awake is. Knowing what your passion is and viewing everything through that same thing. And this quote says, not only do we need to be continually empowered to choose ourselves, meaning that the work to innovate in education will be created by us, but we also have to create identities of plurality. We have to act in our freedom. Freedom is huge. To be able to do things that we can't do on our own but with other people. Now, what do I mean by freedom? Freedom and wide awakeness are completely aligned. Freedom is the ability to realize that the confines and the structures within the classrooms or any institution cannot bind you. We are oftentimes living in this sort of mental slavery, and we're enslaved to institution, to norms. And so freedom means shifting beyond that. Innovation means going beyond that and being mindful. And you can never be mindful if your mind is full. And this idea of your mind being full is your mind being full of established conventions, norms, the rules of engagement. And so if you understand that we have to be mindful and we have to be wide awake, it means then that we have to look at things completely differently. So you guys all look at that image on your screen. Who's seen this before? Right? Parental advisory, explicit lyrics. And usually that means if you see that, run away or make sure you don't purchase that thing for your child. But in this spirit of wide awakeness, in this spirit of moving beyond tradition, that is what draws me to transforming education. The lyrics, the music, the ideas, the thoughts that people say stay away from is what I want to go to because I know that that is what has captured the imaginations of young people. And so this idea of innovation means looking at something like a parental advisory, explicit lyrics, and refashioning it, remixing it, hacking it, and make it turn into this. Set it ablaze and turn that into progressive educational content through hip-hop ed. That the very thing you say to drop is what I want to gravitate towards because that's where innovation lies. And this logo has now been what drives all our work. We have young people in classrooms who actually complete an assignment and hold up this idea that I am hip-hop. I am from the hood. But it also means that I'm engaged in progressive educational practices. That is innovation. And if we go into this process of progressive educational content and hip-hop ed being something that is just as powerful as hip-hop, it means then you also have to, and this is what Maxine Green says is important for white awakeness, to collaborate and connect with folks who are like-minded. Each of those names are Twitter handles of my hip-hop ed collaborators. My innovative practice was essentially just to go online and say, I'm going to find some friends who believe in the same thing I do. In the school where I work, it's just me. At the university where I work, it's just me. And if I can't find folks to help me to create this plurality of voice, I have to go find them. And that's what social media does. So I literally just got on social media and started tweeting. Boy, it would be great if somebody was looking at the intersections of hip-hop and education. I really would like to meet a friend who's doing some work on hip-hop and education. And I believed in it. I breathed in it. I swam in it. And everybody who knew me knows that this is exactly what this guy is about. And all of a sudden, guess what happened? They all started popping up. And I would tweet one message to a guy named Brandon Frame who had never met in Connecticut. And all of a sudden, he'd tweet back. And I said, well, why don't we just use the hashtag hip-hop ed? And then that transformed into a conversation every Tuesday with just he and I. And then 3 years later, it's transformed to a conversation with thousands of people every single Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern on Twitter. That got so huge at one point that people in UK started doing UK hip-hop ed to have their own conversations about the intersections of hip-hop and education. And then people in Toronto started having hip-hop ed TO. And all of a sudden, out of a conversation with two people, simply looking to innovate, we've sparked an educational revolution. And the idea about educational revolutions it's not that you're just, Chris isn't just brilliant to say, why not hip-hop and ed? Everywhere people have thought about these ideas before. But to be completely innovative, you have to create the spaces where you collaborate with people who are just as wide awake, who have the same sensibilities, and together you set the world ablaze. Through hip-hop ed, we've had conversations about everything, including creating a hip-hop health curriculum, all online on Twitter, celebrating 40 years of hip-hop, looking at the educational themes and the culture where people said had no educational value. Talking about bullying. How can we use hip-hop as a bullying tool or as a tool to counter bullying, rather, because it has become a bullying tool. Love in hip-hop. People of color's voices in hip-hop. Deconstructing the BET Awards, that all the negative images that may come from a big media-generated theme that kids are consuming, while that program was going on, we were having our own conversation about how we can utilize or find the educational merit of this program that had no educational messages within it. All of a sudden, my passion is awakened. And we create a space where we have young people across the globe who, on their own, started saying, we are hip-hop ed. We are hip-hop and also immersed in education. They started marketing and making their own baseball caps that said hip-hop ed on it to signify that they are hip-hop and also immersed in education. And that is innovation. And out of hip-hop ed then came this. You guys see that? Does it make any sense? Of course it doesn't. It's this image of nonsense, it seems. And that's what happens when you go on and you say, I'm shirking convention, I'm going to create something. You have this image of just convoluted ideas. And as the ideas come together, they form this sort of pixelation. And you have no idea what it means. But over time, with the right people behind you, with your wide awakeness in place, with questions being answered, with finding communities, with questioning again, those pixels start coming together. And all of a sudden, they come together to create this thing called a hip-hop ed manifesto, a co-constructed manifesto by people across the globe about what they think we can do with hip-hop and education. Looking at the fact that hip-hop means having voice. Looking at the fact that you can rap and also be immersed in the elements of hip-hop, graffiti and b-boying and breakdancing. And these ideas in the manifesto is just showing how this thing that seemingly has nothing to do with education can emerge to become a mantra that has people across the globe marching to the same beat of educational revolution. And out of that, I start going back to my youth. And this is what happens when you bathe yourself in what you want to do. When you immerse yourself in this idea of changing the globe, is that your mind goes back to 20 years, 15 years ago about what have I experienced in my past life that can help me now to go to where I need to be. See, this idea of innovation is not always forward-moving. This is very important. Innovation also means being wide awake enough to be able to reflect back on your own past experiences and to think about how your past experiences could impress themselves upon your future. So as soon as we started doing hip-hop ed, started having these online chats, I became so much more reflective. And I started going back to 1998, when I was in this living room in the Bronx, New York, a seemingly bland space. It's black and white in that image for a reason. And all of a sudden, the Grammy Awards are on. And the Grammy Awards came on, and this happened.
The Grammy goes to
Brooklyn.
Sean Colvin and John Leventhal, songwriters for Sunny
Please calm down. The music and everything. I said, I went and bought me an outfit today that costed a lot of money today. You know what I mean? Because I figured that Wu-Tang was going to win. I don't know how y'all see it, but when it comes to the children, Wu-Tang is for the children. We teach the children. You know what I mean? Puffy is good, but Wu-Tang is the best. Okay? I want y'all to know that this is ODB and I love you all. Peace.
I'm confused now.
Way before Kanye West had his moment, there was Old Dirty Bastard. And he gets up on that Grammy stage and he says, listen, y'all, Wu-Tang is for the children. And I remember sitting in my living room floor saying, what is he doing? What is he talking about? And that now starts making sense. What ODB was projecting was the idea that hip-hop, culture, and music can be a teaching tool. Wu-Tang is for the children. Wu-Tang teaches the children. And by working in hip-hop ed, I go back to my past. And when I go back to my past, I say, I want to do something for my future. And that slowly evolved into this new project called Science Genius. And in Science Genius, essentially,
visit from Emden's most important collaborator.
This happens.
Co-founder of the Science Genius hip-hop science experiment creates the biggest stir. The rapper GZA, from one of the greatest rap groups of all time, Wu-Tang Clan, is a 10th grade dropout turned science geek.
That with the MCs came to live out the name.
He adds star power to the project and shows the students how it's done.
Gravity that's going mad, clouds of dust and debris, moving at colossal speeds, they crush an MC. Since this rap region is heavily packed with stars, internal mirror in the telescope, notice the guards. From far away, we blink as a light to strobe, with great distance of space between precise globes. When you bring an artist in, that's an hip-hop artist and children are so consumed with hip-hop music, then it's a way for them to let their guard down or at least be comfortable enough to give it an ear.
And that is innovation, to me. It's believing in something even though no one around you is doing it, but being so committed to it that you push anyway. That you go through this process of wide awakeness and you find a community that can support you in that endeavor. And when you get that community to support you in that endeavor, you sit back and rest and immerse yourself in it. You reflect back on your past, and you go back to that moment, and yours might not be ODB on a Grammy screen, but that moment where something caught your attention before you even got into this work. And then all of a sudden, you start seeking out opportunities to connect back. Because GZA is Old Dirty Bastard's cousin. And GZA was a person who ended up leaving school in the 10th grade because he always wanted to be a scientist, but no one allowed him to become a scientist. And by pursuing this work, somehow I ended up sitting at the steps of Neil deGrasse Tyson's office, the same time that that GZA went to visit Neil deGrasse Tyson because he wanted to learn more science. And in that moment, I was able to just, because anytime anybody asks me any question, Chris, what do you do? Nice to meet you. I say, well, it's really great to meet you too. My work is talking about science and the intersections of hip-hop and science and education, urban education and hip-hop. Do you have any ideas? And every time you move, you have to move with your mission. Because if you do so, the pieces start coming together. Because out of that chance meeting, that chance day, I just happened to be invited because I ran into this guy, Neil deGrasse Tyson, this iconic person who happened to be at Teachers College of Columbia giving a graduation speech. I so happened to be the guy who was introing him at the graduation. And that usually meant you intro him and then you go away. But as soon as he said, well, who are you? I'm Chris Emden, and my work is on hip-hop and education, the intersection of hip-hop and urban science education. And this is what I do, this is what I believe in. How can you support me in this endeavor? And all of a sudden he says, well, you know, just drop by my office. This rapper guy wants to meet me. And I show up there, and it ends up being Old Dirty Bastard's cousin from Wu-Tang that I watched in 1998. And then he said, hey, how are you? And I said, hey, I'm Chris Edmin. I work on intersections of hip-hop and education, neuroscience, education. Nice to meet you. And all of a sudden, that becomes a pilot program in New York City public schools. Starts with 10 schools where students are having an assignment where they have to write science raps. And they write these science raps and they go into competitions with each other. And whoever wins the competition in the school comes to Columbia University to meet the other 9 winners in other schools. And then they have a rap battle. And at the end of it all, we crown a New York City science genius. And now New York City says, well, this is a great idea. We want to give you 15 more schools. And then now I open up my email every day, and there are emails from South Africa, from Spain, from Jamaica, from across the country of folks who also want to do this project because some kid watched it and said, you know what? I could be a scientist rapper. That out of nowhere, out of swimming in your passion, out of finding folks who believe in what you believe in, innovation is sparked. And that's what this work is about. And I'll leave you with one quote, because I have 3 seconds to go, which always drives me, and it's by Anais Nin. And it says, and the day came when the risk to remain tight in the bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom. And the day came when the risk to keep playing school the way it's always been, to keep doing the same things in classrooms because that's what we were given, to keep following standards and curriculum blindly. The day will come when it becomes so painful to continue that it's a lot more painful than the risk it took to blossom and to follow your passion. Thank you.